Hi, I'm Rebecca Blake. I'm the advocacy liaison for the Graphic Artists Guild, and you're listening to GuildCast.
GuildCast is a weekly podcast series based on the 3 pillars of the Graphic Artists Guild: advocacy, community, and business resources. Keep listening to learn more about the Graphic Artists Guild and visit our website at www.graphicartistsguild.org.
My creative journey has been kind of a slow build. I think that, when I was in art school, I wanted to get going right away, and I wanted to get my clients, and I wanted to get published and do all this stuff, and I wanted to get started right away. But my business has grown slow and steady over the last 7.5 years and continues to grow, which is like good barbecue. It takes a long time. You gotta plan out ahead of time what you're gonna do. You got to make pivots along the way. You got to adjust the temperatures as you go. Add more wood chips to the fire. You got to turn the meat. You got to do a lot of things to it. And it's a slow process, but the rewards are great. It's not going to be quick. It's not going to be easy, but the payoff is there if you're willing to put in the work and kind of see it through. So.
It's bonus week on GuildCast, and this It Came From the South episode rounds out on a high note as we highlight our member in Atlanta, Georgia, William Warren of the Sketch Effect.
Yeah, my name is William. Super happy to chat with you guys. I am an illustrator by trade or by background. I have a master's degree in illustration from Savannah College of Art and Design. Shout out to SCAD, Atlanta campus. And have since kind of leveraged that skill and built a fairly cool business. I think it's really cool, called the Sketch Effect. And what we do is we attend corporate events and meetings and conferences and trade shows. And while people are talking, we are drawing what they're saying. And so we're actively listening. We're synthesizing the ideas down to like the core idea, and then we're sketching it out in pictures and typography and icons and drawings. And so it's a lot of fun, basically adding the creative kind of right-brained world to a typically stiff left-brained kind of corporate setting. And we've had a great time. Almost 8 years in business now. And love being in Atlanta. We work globally, but Atlanta is our home. And super excited to chat with you guys.
That's really cool. Is there a specific type of event that you find you guys get called in for more often?
We have done every single kind of event you can think of, from a massive conference that's packed out in an arena to a small closed door session with 5 or 6 key leaders kind of working through strategic planning. I would say our probably most typical event would be like a company offsite or a company retreat, where a team is gathered for a few days working through a couple of big questions, and we attend that and help document that.
That's really cool. Is there a lot of pressure on you guys? Like, whenever somebody would come up to me and be like, "Oh, you're an illustrator? That's so cool. Draw me something." And like, that's your job. That's literally like what you're doing every day. And what is that like? Like, I know I would shut down and be like, I don't know what to draw. I don't draw. What is drawing? And you just go through an existential crisis. But how does that work for you guys? How do you go through that?
That is a really good question, and it affects how we hire our team. Basically, one of our interview questions is, are you comfortable drawing in front of people? And if the answer is no, then we say, it's probably not the right fit for you. But yes, we are essentially on stage in front of massive amounts of people and drawing on the fly while everyone's watching. So it definitely takes a certain courageous spirit, takes someone who's not afraid of being in the spotlight. And someone who is comfortable with people watching them. Now, the good thing about what we're doing is that when we're typically working with non-creative folks, or rather folks who don't consider themselves artists. So 99% of the time, people are amazed at what we do. So even if our artists think that the work they're doing is not as great as they could do, odds are the people around them are just going to be amazed and just totally in awe of what we're creating.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've been rewatching a lot of Whose Line Is It Anyway episodes. In my head, you guys are doing that. It's like art improv, essentially.
That is actually a phrase that I've used before. We're basically doing art improv. We come in without a plan. We're just in these sessions and we're drawing as people talk and kind of improvising as we go. So sometimes it comes out in a very clean and polished way. Other times it's more scattered and, but that's a great way to phrase it.
Yeah. And do you guys, I always wonder when I'm watching the show if like they practice, and I understand if this is, behind the curtain sort of thing, but do you guys do like brainstorming exercise before you go there, or like something to kind of jumpstart your brain to think like that?
So we don't know what the content's going to be going into it. So we have an idea of what the meeting will be about and maybe what the agenda is and kind of the different topics that the group will work through. But for the most part, we fly in totally blind. Now we do tons of practice sessions with other content and other forms of content. So we're kind of familiar with the process, even though the content's going to be new every time. But yeah, we'll practice. We'll go online. We'll find like brainstorm sessions on YouTube or keynote presentations on YouTube and kind of work off of other content so that when we go into the actual client setting, we're familiar with how it goes, even though the content itself is going to be new.
That's really cool. So our good friend Terrence just joined us, and I know Terrence is excellent at asking questions, so I'm going to hand it over to him.
Get ready to be peppered. No, I'm kidding. Crisy, you and I think so much alike, because I was just going to ask pretty much the same thing. It was like a team building exercise. It's like, how does that work? How do you make sure that you keep everybody engaged? Because it's almost like a sport in many ways to do that. So I guess you kind of outlined some of them.
Yeah, so we've done team building exercises before, and I will say that our goal is really to capture the ideas coming out of it. So if a team is getting together and they're doing like, I don't know, whatever teams do, like trust falls or personality assessments or whatever, we're not necessarily there to like draw the trust fall, although we could, but we're really there to document the insights that come out of it. Like, our team now, we're more trustworthy, or we have a problem with letting go, or we have a problem, or we're really good with staying on task, whatever the insight is that comes out of these sessions, that's what we're there to capture. But yeah, every session's different. And so we've, one thing that we've done in last year with these virtual events is we've had virtual events where they've done, virtual wine tasting or virtual like cocktail mixing or whatever. And so we'll actually sketch that, which is kind of interesting. So
that's really cool.
If you can think of it, we've probably attended a meeting and sketched it.
And do you guys have any parameters in terms of art style? Because I imagine I was looking at your site, you guys have a really big team. And do you guys offer like different styles, or is there kind of a streamlined process in terms of what it looks like visually in the end?
So we have tried to build a house style so that all of our artists, when they're working with a client, that it's a consistent experience. It's a consistent client experience, no matter if they're working with our LA-based artist or our artists in Cincinnati or our Atlanta team, whoever they're working with, we want the client experience to be consistent enough to where they could hop from artist to artist to artist and still have a great experience. Now, obviously, everyone has their own kind of unique style, and what we're doing is it's a hand-created thing. It's, we're not robots. So every person's work looks a little bit different, and the trained artists will pick up on certain differences between our work, but we try to standardize and codify certain aspects of the work. Like we try to pick color palettes the same way. We try to do typography the same way. We try to do little navigational elements like speech bubbles and arrows and things like that. We try to do all those the same way. So there's enough consistency built into how we approach the product that the artists can still kind of apply their own unique style and flair within those parameters. To still create a unique kind of final product, but still be within brand and consistent across the board.
So it's almost like a visual style guide for your company's branding. Like you have these standards that are set. That's really smart. Really
exactly. And part of our onboarding process when we train new artists is we have a 9 or 10 kind of step curriculum that we go through, and we cover all those things. Like this is how we do arrows. This is how we do lettering. This is how we do highlights behind words, things like that.
And I think these are all the behind the scene things that non-creatives or even creatives sometimes don't realize. Like, I don't want to call it a formula, but there's thought and logic behind what we're doing as creatives. We're not just like throwing paint on the wall. It's like, if we do that, there's a reason for it, and we're aiming for something.
Exactly.
And I think that's what elevates, people who are just winging it versus people who are trained and skilled. And, you know, that's where, you know, you went to SCAD, and it's like, you don't just come out of SCAD and just draw arrows for a living just because. It's like, no, these are very specific arrows and they're actually doing something. And, you know, we've created this style, and like Terrence said, it's a brand within art, which is really cool. It's really fascinating that you can, a good brand, if it's well designed, multiple designers or illustrators can draw it, but it all looks the same. And that's, you know, the strength of that. So.
Right. Yeah. I think a lot of creatives, we go into art school because we want to get really good at our craft. We want to get really good at the thing that we love, whether it's designing or animating or drawing. But I think what a lot of folks fail to realize is that if you want to be great at your craft and have a great business, you have to also think through things like process and standards and your brand and boundaries, limitations. Like, you know, in art school, it's fun because you can experiment and try a bunch of different stuff. But if you're trying to run a business that's efficient and generating money and profitable, then you have to think through a lot of those other things beyond just how good is your craft. And so that's something that I always love to encourage creatives to do, to not only get good at your craft, but also start to get good at some of these businessy things. Like processes and standards and time tracking and measuring your metrics and stuff like that.
And so is that stuff that you learned while at school, or did you come at this business with a business mind or an art mind, or both? And like, how did that untangle itself?
I consider myself a creative who has had to learn the business side of things. And so yeah, I definitely did not set out to be an entrepreneur. I never took a business class in school, never read business books growing up. I wasn't into any of that stuff at the time. Now I am, because I've realized that it's the secret to unlocking so much success as a professional creative is to know those things. But so yeah, I've just kind of learned as I went, and I did a couple of years in an entry-level marketing role in corporate America. So I learned a lot doing that. And then, yeah, I've just sort of learned as I've gone along. And it does, however, stem from the fact that when I was in art school, I had a lot of interests beyond just doing my projects. So I wanted to get my work done so I could go and do other things I was interested in, like hang out with friends or go to concerts or go eat delicious barbecue. So for me, from the outset, I was always tracking my time. I was always like, if I was working on a set of thumbnails and I had to make 4, 8 or whatever, I would like time myself so that I would not be spending hours and hours and hours, but, you know, make sure I get it done. And so I remember I'd be finishing up my work at 10 p.m. And then, you know, as a 20 something, that means I got hours to go hang out with friends and party, whatever. Whereas I had friends that would be working till 6 a.m. and I just didn't want to do that. So what at the time though, what I was learning is that's the precursor to tracking your efficiency and ultimately your profitability as a professional creative is your time. So it's a long-winded way to answer that question, but no, everything I've learned with regard to business, I've mostly just picked up and along the way from listening to podcasts like this one, reading books, watching TED Talks, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And it's a mark of, you know, I think creatives are oftentimes sponges, and we're so focused on sponging up art world stuff that we forget about other industries that we can pull from. Exactly. So I think that's, you know, a good mark of you as a creative in every sense of the word, that you're pulling from as much as you can. And, you know, to have fun, you know, we don't have to be slaves to our professions or anything. So
that's right.
Any resistance to that between the people who you are training for your house style, or resistance from your other design cohorts who are like, oh, you're just doing it as quickly as possible and you're not taking time to like really appreciate or delve deeply into what you're doing?
That's a great question. Any resistance to it? We have tried to be very deliberate to encourage our artists that having boundaries is actually freeing. It's actually more freeing, especially when you're creating work that someone is buying. You know, when you're selling a creative service, you don't have unlimited time to just like pour your soul into something. Like someone's buying it. in order for your business to be successful, it has to be done in a way that's profitable. So it has to be done on time, and then it has to be done in a way that the client is expecting it. So it has to match what their expectations with what they've seen. So we've taught our team that these boundaries are it's actually a form of freedom, because you don't have to worry about all the things that have already been kind of set as, determined, and that they can just do their best job within the within the parameters of the work. However, what we have done with our team is we've set aside deliberate time that we call experimentation days, and also inspiration days, where we say, okay, we're going to work on all this client stuff. We're going to do it a certain way. We're going to do it on time, on budget, and within kind of our creative parameters. However, we're also going to set aside some time that's unscripted, where we're just going to play. We're going to go and watch awesome YouTube videos. We're going to try some new techniques. We're just going to try stuff and see what we love, see what sticks. And what's been really cool about that is some of our best client innovations or product innovations have come out of that sort of unscripted, unscheduled creative free time, if you will. Like we'll watch videos from other creative agencies or other animation firms and been like really inspired by something they've done. And then we just gone and worked on it, see if we can kind of mirror that look or kind of learn from it. So we try to balance, to kind of tie up this question, Terrence, we try to balance knowing that the client work has to be done a certain way, on time, on budget. But we also, in order for us to be the best creative practitioners, we also have to have time to explore, time to experiment, time to try stuff, time to learn, time to grow. So hopefully we're balancing both of those. During busier times, it might be more about the client stuff, like get the work done. But we try our best to balance those two realities of being a creative professional.
The 16th edition of Pricing and Ethical Guidelines is now available on Amazon and www.graphicartistsguild.org. Join the Graphic Artists Guild to get your copy free.
You find that it's been hard to strip away like your passion for art and then siphoning it off to become a business and like your work? Do you have any lines in the sand that you've had to draw for yourself to be able to still have fun in the art world and not see it as work or like self-improvement for work? Or are you okay with that sort of ambiguous nebula?
That is always a struggle. And I think that's something that creatives who want to become a paid professional creative need to wrestle with, because there is a transition from this is my passion, this is what I love to do, to now I'm going to take that and try to make money off of it. So I'm taking my passion, which is very closely associated with my heart, my soul, my dreams. I'm taking all this kind of stuff, and now I'm monetizing it, or I'm converting it into a product or into a service. And that is a pretty tough kind of emotional gap to jump across as a creative. And it's been hard for me. There's been times where, normally I would want to go home and draw, or if I'm on a trip and on a vacation on the beach, I might want to like sketch while I'm sitting there. And then sometimes, because this is my job, I don't necessarily want to do that during my downtime. I want to watch Netflix or read a book or, go out to eat or something. And so what I have found though, is that it's really important to establish healthy rhythms where you have that kind of personal time to do the type of creative work that really does fill your soul, and really does kind of tap back into that kind of the passion side of things. Because if you're not careful, the passion ends up becoming the profession, and then the profession saps all the passion that you originally had out of it. So it's really important to set up healthy rhythms. And this is part of a broader conversation around self-care and kind of personal health, but set up some rhythms to continue to have that sort of more passionate, like creative time. And so I've had to do that. Like, this is, one thing that I love. I love drawing maps, and I love traveling. And so I've tried to encourage myself that once I'm home from work, once I'm done with the workday, to like break out my pen and ink and start drawing maps and just like thinking about stuff that I really do love. And that's been a healthy balance to have the two. But I think it's a struggle that will never go away. I think it's a tension that will never go away for creatives who are trying to monetize their passion. But it's all about setting up healthy boundaries between work and play.
Tammy,
I have a question before I head out, because I have to head out. What do you do it like for my business? It's my main business, but then I have kind of like a passion project on the side. Do you have anything like that going on?
I do, yeah. So I mentioned the map drawing thing. That's one thing that I've been kind of doing on the side, which is fun. I don't know if it's ever going to materialize what it'll become, but right now it's just a way for me to decompress and kind of have some fun creative time. But I am working on a new side thing, which is kind of around these topics we've been talking about. It's called The Conquering Creative. I'll give a little plug. It's theconqueringcreative.com and also on Instagram at The Conquering Creative. And basically, it's a platform for me to kind of share back out with the world some of these business lessons I've learned along the way. Like I said, I didn't set out to be a business guy or to be an entrepreneur or to run a small business, but that's where I found myself. And I found that it's actually really awesome to kind of learn some basic business stuff. It's really awesome to learn some basic business fundamentals that can unlock a really successful creative career. And so the Conquering Creative is really a platform just to share back no-nonsense business advice to aspiring creative professionals, creative entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, creative freelancers, side hustlers, anyone who wants to take their creative passion, like we've talked about, and then turn it into a profitable business. So that's been the thing I've been working on, just half an hour here or there, maybe a couple hours a week. But on the website, there's some blog content around some basic business fundamentals, like how do you write a good proposal? How do you delegate tasks effectively? How do you manage your time most effectively? Then there's some more tactical stuff, like there's a business model canvas guide that people can download and use to help kind of work through their business model. There's a goal setting framework, which I love, called 4DX, which sounds super businessy and super lame, but it's really helpful in terms of setting goals, tracking your daily inputs to reach that goal, and then measuring it in a way that is that you're accountable to, and that encourages you to work towards that. And then finally, it's really a platform for encouragement and kind of basic just encouragement for creatives, because it is a hard thing to do to try to, your whole life you've gotten really good at your craft, and all of a sudden you're supposed to be good at your craft and also being a business person. And that can be really hard, really discouraging. And so the platform is really designed to help people realize it's not as scary as you think it is. It's not as hard as you think it is. And it will unlock so much more potential in your life if you can just kind of figure out a few key things. So to answer your question, that's kind of my new side thing, is this Conquering Creative platform. And it's been a lot of fun sharing it with folks, and hopefully will make a difference in people's lives as they pursue their creative careers.
I always think it's a healthy thing to have something that's kind of your own, that no one's telling you, do this. It's kind of nice to just have a free, something that is all you 100%.
Totally. And right now it's not monetized. I'm not selling anything. It's just kind of a place for me to kind of put some wisdom back out into the world, or what I would consider wisdom. It's not the most mind-blowing stuff, but it's stuff that I think everyone could benefit from. But yes,
I think it'll build. I see the vision for it. I think it'll definitely build and turn into something that you didn't think it was going to be. I'm open to following it wherever it goes. So if it builds, if it gains traction, then so be it. But in the meantime, it has been good for me to have sort of an outlet to put some other stuff in the world. And I draw on the platform. So I do, all my blog posts have a little illustration, and on the social media page, every post is a drawn thing that I've created. So it's been fun to also have a chance to just kind of draw some silly stuff and put it up there.
It almost sounds like you're doing your sketch effect for yourself, because like you're distilling down all these concepts that you've had for years and finding a way to be able to map them out, and you draw maps too, and like create roadmaps for other folks. So I think that's really cool how you're inadvertently, bringing it back onto yourself and putting it out there in a different way. Mind you, you're not doing, the sketches like you do for your business, but it's still kind of cool that you're feeding into that concept and pushing it back out.
Well, I just love visual communication, visual learning. And now that I do it now that we do it for the sketch effect business. I can't communicate without visuals. I mean, I guess this podcast is doing that, but this is also just a conversation. So, when I'm communicating a message, I have to pair it with visuals. I just have to. It's just part of my DNA, and makes it more fun to kind of translate what I'm trying to say from words into pictures.
Yeah, it's been an interesting challenge for us doing this podcast because we're all visuals, and you've seen me. We're doing this over Zoom. I'm like waving, I use gestures, and I'm trying to like not, because I rely on that when I communicate. So it's interesting for us, I think, also doing the podcast platform when it's a visual concept. You know, there's no pictures. We have to all imagine it in our heads.
Yeah, it's a good challenge for creatives to distill what we're trying to communicate down into verbal only. So I think it's a good exercise especially for creatives. I would encourage non-creatives to do the opposite, to try to communicate your messages using pictures. But for those of us that are creative, it's good to try the opposite, to try to see if we can communicate using just our words and our language.
If anything, it helps us appreciate the other side a lot more. Like, I never appreciated copywriters so much until I had to sit down and like write something. I was like, okay, I see why it's a different profession. That's really cool.
Exactly. And people that are really good at radio and podcasts, you appreciate how hard it is to just kind of have a conversation that feels, and y'all have done a great job of this, but have a conversation that just feels natural and a value add, and you're getting into good topics and stuff. It's a challenge across the board. So
I'd be remiss not to ask you, we always end up talking about food. So I'm going to ask you
food. I'm a fan of food.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Do you like to cook? Do you like to eat? Do you have a favorite restaurant? Something that you've been craving?
Yes, I'm a huge barbecue fanatic. I love smoked meat. And so originally I would go and just try out different restaurants. But a few years ago, I actually started a new hobby, which is I make my own barbecue. So I've got 2 smokers at home, and I will every week or so I'll come home from work or come home with a big hunk of meat, whether it's a brisket or pork butt or something, ribs, and then I'll smoke it. And it's actually a really creative hobby. I guess all cooking is creative, but with barbecue, you're trying different meats, you're trying different rubs, you're trying different injections, you're trying different types of wood chips. I could talk about barbecue all day long, so I'll end it with just that. This has been my favorite thing. This has been my new hobby, is making my own make my own barbecue at home. But yeah.
That's awesome. So we, in one of our podcasts, I don't know if it ever got published or not, but we talked about seeing parallels between ourselves as creatives and as chefs in the kitchen. Like, are you a wing it sort of guy? Do you take notes and have like a book where you've kind of tracked what's worked and what hasn't worked? Or like, what do you like as a chef versus as a creative?
I think the parallel with my creative world, with my creative kind of professional world is really there, because sometimes I wing it and sometimes I take meticulous notes. And so I'm constantly always between this sort of like, do I just wing it or do I plan everything? So maybe it's all over the place, but I do, I try, when I'm on my game, I document what I'm doing, and I'm documenting everything and tracking the temperature of the meat and tracking what rubs I'm using and stuff like that. But sometimes I just wing it. So yeah, that's a good question.
Coming up on this episode of GuildCast.
This is kind of maybe boring or lame, but it's really critical, which is to begin tracking your time and track it very diligently, because as a creative, your time is your most valuable and finite resource. It cannot be replenished. It cannot be replaced. And for creatives, unless you're sculpting out of gold or your paints are mixed with, platinum, unless you're doing that, your time is your most precious resource. So you need to know where your time is going. You need to know what you're spending your time on. You need to know what things you're doing that you shouldn't be doing, or what things you should be doing more efficiently. So that way you can redeploy your time in a way that makes the most impact to growing your business.
Join the Graphic Artists Guild to listen to the full version of this episode at www.graphicartistsguild.org. Thanks for listening to GuildCast, a weekly podcast series based on the 3 pillars of the Graphic Artists Guild: advocacy, community, and business resources. Keep listening to learn more about the Graphic Artists Guild and visit our website at www.graphicartistsguild.org.